Okay, so I'm going to now show you how to use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for a missing side of a triangle. It's a great time to write this down as I'm doing it. So we're going to start out by following step number 1, which is to label your sides with A, B, and C. If you remember, the video we watched the other day said that our right angle in the triangle points to our side C. So if you made an arrow out of the right angle, it points to our side C. So this is our side C. We don't know how much it is, so we know that we're looking for side C. And then A and B are whichever legs you want them to be. Okay, step 2 says determine which side is missing. So we already said side C is missing. How do we know? Because there's no number here. Side C is missing. Okay, so now we're going to write out the Pythagorean theorem equation. So I'm going to write out A squared plus B squared. Ooh, this handwriting. Equals C squared. And once you get better at practicing this, you don't have to write out the equation, but for now we're going to write it out. Okay, step 4, replace each variable with the number that's given. So we said A is 12, so we're going to now replace A with 12. Let me change my color here, if my pen will work. So we're going to replace A with the number 12. We're going to replace B with the number 10. And then we're going to fill in the rest of the problem. So we know it's squared plus our B, which is 10 squared. And then we don't know what C is. We have no clue, so we're going to write, if my pen will work, we're going to write equals C squared, or you can put X squared, whichever one you feel comfortable with. So now all we're going to do is some basic math. So we say, okay, what is 12 squared? Well, 12 squared means 12 times 12. 12 times 12, if you remember from way back when, is 144. Plus 10 squared, that's 10 times 10, which is 100. And we still don't know what C is, so we're going to put equals C squared, because we haven't done anything on this side yet. Okay, so now I'm going to add these two together. When I add 144 and 100, I get 244. So I'm going to write that out. Draw an arrow so we know where I'm going with this. 244 equals C squared. And so the last thing we have to do to be able to solve this has to do with what your warm-up was today, which is using square root. Why do we use the square root? Because square rooting is the inverse or the opposite of squaring. So it gets rid of that squared so we can solve it. So we're going to take our square root, and whatever we do to one side, always got to do to the other side. Okay, so the square root undoes the C squared. So now I have C equals, and then I have to use a calculator that I don't have available. Where's my phone? 1 second, okay, I'm back. The square root of 244 is 15.6. I think I'm right. So all I did was punch that in a calculator, 244, hit the square root button, and I get 15.6. And that is my answer. And you can kind of know if you did it correctly because C should always be bigger than A and B because it's our longest side. So it should definitely be longer than my other two sides. In this case, 15.6 is longer. And so our final answer is that C is 15.6. Okay, I'm going to quickly go through this one here, but it's a little different because if you notice, the thing that's missing is not C. So it's going to be a little bit different of a process. Again, I need to label my sides first. My right angle points to side C, or my hypotenuse. So in this case, C is 14. And then A and B can be whatever of the two legs you want them to be. In this case, B is 9 and A is our missing side. So we know we're missing A. I'm going to write out the equation. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And now I'm going to replace each of the variables that have values or numbers with the numbers that were given. So A is still, we don't know, so I'm going to leave it as A squared. Again, you can write it as X squared, whatever floats your boat, plus B squared, which in this case is 9, so I'm going to put 9 squared, equals our C squared, which in this case is 14 squared. Okay, so in this case, when I don't know A or B, when I'm not privileged to have the number for A or B, I'm going to solve it very similarly to this, except instead of adding the two numbers together, I now need to subtract, and you'll see how that works when I do it right now. So I am going to first figure out what 9 squared is. 9 squared is 9 times 9, which is 81. So now I have A squared plus 81 equals, and I got to do 14 squared. 14 times 14 is 196. I remembered something. Okay, so I have 196. And so now what I need to do, think about it, if you were solving a problem out for A, I need to move this 81 to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 81 on both sides. Okay, when I do that, I'm going to come up here. When I subtract them, I get, change my pen color here. 6 minus 1 is 5. 9 minus 8 is 1. So I get 115 equals my A squared. And now we know that to get rid of a squared, we have to use a square root. So I'm going to square root both sides of the equation, because whatever I do to one side, got to do to the other. And when I do that, I'm going to get a decimal that I don't know right now, but I'm going to go figure it out. So A equals, so I end up getting A equals 10.7. And depending on how they tell you to round, that would determine how many numbers you have after your decimal place. In this case, I rounded to the nearest 10th, which is one number after the decimal. And I can kind of baby check my work. I know that A and B should be smaller than C. And if I look here, 10.7 is smaller than 14. So I at least know I did something kind of right? Well, now it is your turn to give it a try. See if you can do it on the next slide. You got this. And if you have questions, type them in the chat.